Hello, everyone, and welcome to Earp Sister Feels, episode number 14. My name is Kevin Batchelder, and on this video, I'm going to be discussing the Wynonna Earp episode Everybody Knows, which is season 2, episode number 7. Appreciate you folks checking out the video. Welcome back for regular viewers, and a special welcome for any of you that are new and jumping right in. I have a lot of fun doing these, reacting to each of the Wynonna Earp episodes here on Rewatch, looking at things from the Earp Sister point of view, and also making these very much a community project by getting video comments from several of you. And everyone is welcome to send in comments. After I release these videos for about 48 hours, I keep them available for you to be able to post a video comment, and then I close them down as far as submissions and submit that final video with my comments and comments from many of you up on YouTube. So if you'd like to share some comments, feel free to keep it around 3 to 5 minutes or thereabouts. You don't need a special app. You'll notice that down below this video is a button that says Record or Apply. On your smartphone, all you have to do is tap that, and you can record the video, and then you can play it back, make sure you're comfortable with it, and then save it and send it in. It's that simple. And then after a couple of days of having them open, I'll put them up on YouTube. Playlist up there for all of the videos I've done in case you're new and want to go back and start from the beginning, because we are working our way through the first 3 seasons of the show over the next couple of months. So looking forward to getting your thoughts there. Now, those of you who've been with me for a while or since the beginning know that I've mentioned recently there was a kind of a special story I was going to add to one of these videos. And this is the episode. A little later on, I'll give you some background on something that was pretty special that relates to it. So look for that coming up. All right, as far as the Earp Sister scenes in this episode, for those of you that are regular fans who've seen it many times, you know there's really only 2 big scenes, if you will, or lengthy ones. But boy, are they big. But we do have a few interactions, so we'll go through them all here before we get to that big stuff. And yes, I do hope you have your tissues handy. Might come in, come and be very valuable, certainly for me, because I will admit this is not my first time recording this video, and it had nothing to do with technical problems, okay? I'll leave it at that. I think you know exactly why. All right, beginning of the episode, we do have a scene at the homestead with the ladies and Jeremy, basically kind of catching everybody up on what's happening with the widows and all that's going on. We then have a scene in the bedroom where it's basically Wynonna telling Waverly that Doc might not actually be the dad. So that's a big revelation there for Waverly. Which leads to the next scene when the 2 of them are in the kitchen, and Waverly is kind of being Waverly, and that she's starting to freak out about that idea that it might not be Doc. But it makes for a little fun, and then actually leads to a scene that's not an Earp Sister one, but I do have to make a comment on it. And that is the one where Doc and Wynonna are there in the kitchen. The job that Mel and Tim do here, simply amazing, the way they convey emotion. You've probably noticed it, but if by chance you happened, I would recommend you rewatch this scene and turn the sound off. Just look at their faces, especially around the moment when Tim touches Mel's belly. Boy, you talk about conveying emotion. Powerful stuff. It's one of the reasons why we love this show, most of us, because of the way all of the actors can do it. We then have the scene, the fun one, as the main plot of what this episode is, when Nicole and Wynonna end out to Pussy Willows. But we have the scene out back with Waverly when she comes back, where it's the fun one, and Waverly talking about having to go to 3 strip joints and getting the strawberry glitter in her hair and scented glitter, whatever it was. It's a lot of fun trying to chase them down. But it leads to the really big scenes that we have here. The first one, Wynonna's realized that the Reverend Jonas that she had sex with, he knows and is going to spread that news throughout the community, and that would be a real problem. So she is willing to try to give him a chance. She tries to talk to him to see if he'll be willing to kind of keep this to himself. But he's being way too much of a dick. And, no matter how much he tries to ask, he just keeps being more of an ass. Waverly tries to tell him to shut up, and we can kind of tell where this is going as viewers. He's not going to have anything to do with it, and Wynonna is not going to jeopardize herself or Waverly or the baby, and she is going to put him down. And she does. Just before she does, she tells him she's going to raise the baby to be good and strong and everything you're not. How's that for a kick? That was powerful. Certainly emotional watching that. And then we have the scene. My notes from when we first did the podcast, I called it the 16 words to break us all, because it certainly broke me. Man, talking about superhero and same damn thing single mom, and the two of them taking care of it. Wow, man, get emotional every time watching it, talking about it. It's really something, talking about it on the podcast and talking about it here. Because to me, that whole exchange in most of the show, but certainly that whole exchange there really embodies, what it's been like as far as this Earp experience, this fandom, this show. You do what you have to. You do what's right. And that's very much what Wynonna's talking about, and that's very much what we as Earpers do. So it really rushes through me when I see that, and it's just so powerful, and it means so much. And oh man, on the podcast, a couple of these scenes, talking about them, you can hear my voice cracking a little if you really pay attention. And I'm doing pretty good here right now, trying not to be too emotional on the video, but it's so important. And then we follow that up with the scene back at the homestead. I mean, if that wasn't enough just to drop us right there, the scene back at the homestead with Wynonna sitting on the stairs and talking to Waverly and actually getting more at ease with this whole idea, as she says, calling it a baby, and realizing what's going on. And then actually saying it'll be calling you Auntie Waverly. Then we see Waverly start to break, because she brings up the fact that, from everything she's learned from Bobo and all, that she might not be an Earp. She might not be actually Wynonna's sister, really, even her sister. So talk about another gut punch. Both of these scenes, but especially the second one, if you listen to the audio podcast, Our Tales of the Black Badge that Bonnie and I do, when I talked about that scene with Waverly at the end, you can hear a definite pause there when I start talking about it. And, Bonnie knows me so well. She jumped right in to start talking to cover for me, because I was about to lose it. So another reason why I love her so much, she definitely picked up on that. Not that both scenes weren't, but it really came out for me by the time we talked about the Waverly one. And a couple of other things here that you folks will appreciate. This episode aired during San Diego Comic-Con 2017. And as many of you know, we get screeners from the Sci-Fi Channel. So we were able to see the episodes early. It helps with doing the podcast and the interviews and all. So I knew this was going to be airing right during Comic-Con. And, one of the things the cast loves to do is to live tweet the episodes. So I know that Allison and the folks at IDW were trying to set up some type of, public event where the cast could be, because they were almost all of them were there at San Diego Comic-Con, to be able to live tweet it and have the fans be able to join in. But they weren't able to pull that off to be able to find the space. I mean, it's so hard to find there at San Diego Comic-Con. But I was working through the help of some Earpers to try to find some private room at one of the nearby hotels, so we could get a bunch of Earpers together at least to do the live tweet, at least together. That way we wouldn't all be going off to, our hotel rooms or trying to do it from a bar stool or whatever. Not that couldn't have been fun, but so I had been working to find one there, and with the relationship that I've developed with IDW and with the cast, Allison from IDW said, well, if you get something set up, maybe I can get the cast to come as well, if it's, a space that they'd be comfortable with. So we worked very hard that day to get that set up, and major thanks to Maureen, one of the New York City Earpers, who's often been documenting the billboards in our fight for Wynonna. She was able to find a space at the hotel that she was staying at. And I was able to line up about 12, 15 Earpers, folks that I knew, to come for this live tweet event, for as far as they knew, just the Earpers. But maybe regular contributor on the videos here, Jill, a.k.a. Nedley's Office, can give some perspective if she leaves a comment as one of the folks who was there. I didn't know right up until just a couple of minutes before the event if the cast was going to be able to come with us and do it together. But I got the phone call that they were. Very exciting. I got to meet them, in the lobby of the hotel. And one of my greatest thrills, Earper thrills, was being able to lead the cast up to this room with these set of my friends and Earpers. We're just hanging out thinking we're all just going to be Earpers, live tweeting, and to watch the look on their faces as the cast all filed in. The only member who wasn't there was Shamir, who had another commitment, but we had all of the main cast, Mel and Tim, Dom and Kat. We had also Varun and Tamara. Tim's wife was there, Emily. It was just an amazing group. So to be able to live tweet with the cast, that's a special thing that I will never forget. I mean, that's what we all love doing, is live tweeting. So to have them all there in the room and hear them bantering back and forth as they're tweeting, and all of us chatting during the commercial breaks, because we're doing it, as the episode is airing. Wow, what a special event. And to be able to help actually make it happen. Never going to forget that. But the reason I bring that up here is that 16-word scene meant a lot to me, as I said. And I wanted to tell the cast that. So after that scene aired, there's a commercial break, I stood up and I talked about how much the show, the cast, their interaction with the fans, they're so giving of their time for the fans and for Bonnie and I on the podcast. And I talked about how much it meant to me. I don't know if my voice cracked. It might have. Jill maybe can fill us in. Thought I did pretty good. Was afraid I might lose it, but I didn't. Yeah, but it was very important to me to say that and to say it to all of them together. And again, it just made it more special, but it's, they need to hear it. We all really appreciate what they do, and it was important. So that was pretty special, and another example of, just how giving they were to be able to do this with all of us. Just so special. And this episode the same way. So that should pretty much wrap it up here. I am very proud of myself for not breaking down here, at least on this recording. But I am looking forward to some of your comments. I'd love to hear from you folks. If you're not a video type person, that's fine. Reply on Twitter or Facebook. I'd love to be able to at least read them too, because these are very much about the community. But I am looking forward to getting some video comments so we can put it together in the final version that'll go up on YouTube. So folks, appreciate you checking in. All your hard work on our fight for Wynonna. That we are going to prevail in that. I am 100% certain. So keep at it. I'll keep at these videos. We have ClexaCon coming up in a few days, so it'll probably be about another week before one of these videos gets out. But looking forward to seeing many of you there. In the meantime, keep being your awesome selves. Love you all, and I hope you all take care.
Hi guys, this is Terry Ann. I'm doing an Earp Sister Feels video for Wynonna Earp, Season 2, Episode 7. And like Kevin said, there aren't a ton of Earp sister scenes in this episode, but the ones that we do have are just really great. And one of the first scenes that they have together is when Wynonna is telling Waverly that Doc may not be the father. And it shows great, it shows such great emotional growth from Waverly when she finds out this information, and she's really trying hard to keep her gut reaction in check. And she kind of tries to temper her reaction so that she doesn't transfer her own instinctual judgments onto Wynonna. And she's trying to keep a safe and open space for her sister, who's already in a pretty vulnerable position, so that Wynonna can feel comfortable to share and not retreat back into secrets. And even in the next scene that we see the two of them in together, we see that even though Waverly isn't perfect, and she hasn't gotten the whole full support, no judgment thing down completely, she's only human. And she even takes a moment, like after freaking out about Doc potentially shooting everything and getting upset about not being the dad. Waverly takes a moment to ground herself and shift her focus. So she stops kind of thinking about the situation from an outside view, and how, in terms of how could this happen to them, Doc's going to freak out, Doc's going to be crushed, and she brings it back down to just the two of them, her and Wynonna, and she is just offering her support in the capacity that she's able to give it. But it is pretty hilarious when we see her seconds later just kind of walking out and leaving Wynonna to tell Doc about him potentially not being the father on her own. And it shows again that Waverly's human, and she's still a work in progress, but she's really trying for her sister. And the next Earp Sister scene that I want to talk about is towards the end, after Wynonna puts down that jerk Revenant guy, and Waverly asks Wynonna, this baby, what is it? And Wynonna says, ours. And I thought that was just perfect. It was just such a great moment between the two of them, and it hits me right in the Earp Sister Feels, but in the happy and hopeful fields. which is different from the last scene, or one of the last scenes that the two of them have together, when Wynonna is talking to Waverly about her being an aunt, and Waverly finally breaks. And it just pulls at my heartstrings, because Waverly throughout the whole episode has been trying so hard and failing and trying and failing and trying again to just be there for her sister and offer love and non-judgmental support, and trying not to make it about her or other people. And she's been trying to put her own emotions aside to try to hold space for her sister to just be in her feelings and process things and come up with a plan. And in this moment, Waverly finally cracks and says that she doesn't think that she's Wynonna's sister, or that she's even an Earp. And for a brief instant, it's kind of like she reverts back to the trauma of feeling like an abandoned little girl, when she says, "What about my history?" And it just breaks my heart, because it kind of reminds me of a little kid that thought they were going to get everything that they wanted, and then it's just taken away from them, and they're left disappointed and sad and hurt and confused, and they just don't really know what to do. They just feel alone. And even as Waverly is crying, she doesn't go to Wynonna for comfort, and she just kind of stands in those painful emotions on her own. And it's like she knows that Wynonna has all of these other things that she needs to worry about, and she doesn't want to burden her too much with her own issues. And it's sad to watch, but, you know, we have faith in the Earp sisters, and we know they're going to prevail and make it through this, because they have each other, and they always find a way. So this was another great episode. That's all the comments I have. And hopefully I'll see you guys in another video. Bye.
All right. Take number 5003. For Season 2, Episode 7 of Wynonna Earp, Everybody Knows is the title of the episode. And I wanted to talk about that first because like all of the titles of all of the episodes, they're country songs. So this one is particularly important to me, and I also thought that it is very Earpy and very apt for all of the feelings and all of the revelations that happen in this episode with our girls. So there's part of the song that says, "Just another day of everybody looking. I swore they'd never see me cry. You'll never see me cry. Stepping out, everyone can see my face. All the things I can't erase from my life, everybody knows." So, if that ain't the Earpiest Earpy shit in the whole world, I have no idea what is. So there's a lot of revelations that are made in this episode, and a lot of like secrets that Wynonna and Waverly have been keeping that are revealed to each other. And there's sort of 3 specific moments that I wanted to talk about. Just to keep it as short as possible. So Wynonna reveals to Waverly that Doc might not be the father, which up until now, that is what Waverly has known. I mean, so we're like, 4 episodes of knowing that she's pregnant, and up until now, Waverly essentially has like felt like she's in the loop, so she kind of freaks out at Wynonna. And is sort of losing it a little bit. And I think how Wynonna responds shows like all the growth that she's had over the last 2 seasons. And just in the way that she knows Waverly and reacts to Waverly. So she just sort of like takes it all in, and she doesn't get defensive. She doesn't leave the room. She doesn't explode. She doesn't tell Waverly to stop talking. She says that she's being unhelpful, which is a healthy reaction, because Waverly's not being very helpful. But she also just like lets Waverly talk and just takes it all in, which I think is like a pretty huge moment. Another moment is right before Wynonna decides to kill Jonas, which they've had like the conversation of the back and forth, like, are they going to kill him? Are they not going to kill him? But he is a total ass, so that's what they decide to do. And there's a moment, right, like you can see the gears sort of working and turning in Wynonna's brain, and she decides that this is probably the best option. But there's a small glance, it's like a second long, there's like a glance to Waverly, and Waverly nods, and there's just this silent sort of support that's given, which previously Wynonna wouldn't, I don't think, have ever even considered letting anyone else in to her decision-making process, and that with her being the heir, she's been very stalwart and being like, I am the heir, it's my decision. But in this moment, she sort of seeks just the support of someone to be like, am I making the right decision here? And Waverly gives it without hesitation. So that is a pretty big moment I think for me anyway. And then the very last thing, obviously, when Waverly reveals that she doesn't think that she's an Earp, or that she's Wynonna's sister, I think it's important also to note that Wynonna doesn't lose it. She doesn't say, like, why didn't you tell me? You know, any of, like, the reactions that could have been negative. And it is another thing that, like, I mean, Waverly's known that for, like, 9 episodes. I mean, a long time. A very long time. And I feel like in that position, Wynonna would have every right to be angry, but, or that that something like that was withheld from her. But she takes Waverly's vulnerability in stride and handles it beautifully. So lots of, like, good and tragic and happy and hilarious things in this episode, pulling me through all sorts of different twists and turns. But I'm almost at 5 minutes, so I gotta end it now. But thank you, Kevin, for keeping this going during the fight for Wynonna, and I look forward to the next episode.
Hey all, Nedley's office here, Jill, as most people call me. Wow, 207, right? So let's talk about the Earp Sister Feels in 207. I think the most important thing to remember about 207 is how we left 206, which was with Waverly cradling a pretty broken and upset Wynonna in her arms, talking about the baby, the pregnancy. That was a pretty pivotal moment in the Earp sisters' relationship, where Wynonna wasn't the strong, protective sister. She wasn't, the upper hand of this relationship. Waverly was the strong one. Waverly was providing the comfort. And that comes into this episode entirely, I feel, where these two sisters are trying to figure out this dynamic between them, where Wynonna really isn't quite the stronger one here. Waverly is the stronger one. We're so used to seeing Wynonna as the protective older sister, and in this episode I feel like we see Waverly as the protective younger sister. I think you see that when it's a scene that it wasn't between the Earp sisters, but when Nicole goes and confronts Wynonna, and Wynonna's like, what the hell are you doing here? And Nicole has this statement, and I'm going to read it. She says, I am not to let you out of my sight until Waverly comes back. You're going through a lot, and she doesn't want you to be alone right now. I can imagine that was verbatim of what Waverly told Nicole, was don't let her out of your sight, because she's going through a lot, and she doesn't want Wynonna to be alone. This is Waverly being the protective younger sister of her older sister that needs this help right now. And then we fast forward all the way through the fantastic drawn caught scenes to when they're together again. And that scene just after Wynonna puts Jonas down, and like, I can talk about the cinematography of that scene, the stark cold winter, kind of a duel at midnight kind of feel to it, with these two opponents facing off. And then when she puts him down, the fire reflecting in her eyes, and Waverly being next to her and saying, you're a superhero and this baby is ours. And it was just beautiful. Like, the whole way that whole storyline played out was really just beautiful between these two sisters. And then we fast forward to the scene where at the homestead, where Wynonna is on the stairs, and she's feeling better about the baby. She's like, as Kevin pointed out, she says, oh, it's a baby, I can say that now. And she seems to have turned the corner, and she's not as broken or uncertain as she was before this. And that's when Waverly then feels like she's allowed to be the weaker one, for lack of a better term. She's been holding this secret for so long. At first she didn't tell Wynonna because she was good. And then she didn't tell Wynonna because Wynonna had her own crap she was dealing with. And so Waverly has been keeping this really big, huge thing inside of her for this long. And finally now she feels like she can confess this to Wynonna, because Wynonna is in a place where she can hear it. And she tells her that maybe she's not an Earp. And wow. I am very much a Waverly Earp is the Earpiest Earp that ever Earped. And I say that in the present tense. Waverly Earp is the Earpiest Earp that ever Earped. And so this moment on the stairs, when Wynonna was on the stairs and Waverly finally told her maybe she's not an Earp, was a watershed moment for me as a fan. And I'm going to talk just momentarily about what Kevin had mentioned, that when I watched this episode for the first time was at San Diego Comic-Con, and it was in a room with the cast. And in this moment, I kid you not, Emily Andress was sitting right behind me. And when Waverly said, I might not even be an Earp, and Wynonna goes, what? And then it fades to black. And I turned around, I swiveled in my seat, and I just looked at Emily, who was sitting, again, right behind me. And I just went, oh! Like, I tried to express everything that I had, like, how dare you end it right there? I just seemed like, what? And she just kind of cackled in my face. She was like, ha, 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 ha. And it was one of those moments where, I mean, that whole night, as Kevin said, you knew that this was a special moment in time, that this is something that had never happened before. As long as I'd been in fandom, it had never happened before. I'd never even heard of it happening before. And it will probably never happen again. But it was that whole experience, this whole episode, everything that was on the screen, everything that was played out in that room, it was special. The show was special. This cast is special. The feelings that we get when we watch this show, and that when we communicate with other people that watch this show, is special. It's just special. I don't even know how else to say it. And so, yeah, I loved that moment. I will always kind of laugh, as I am now, about the fact that I turned around and gave Emily Andress the stink eye when it faded to black at the end of that episode, because I couldn't believe she ended it right there, just as Waverly said she might not be an Earp. But it's just a wonderful time. And there were not a lot of dry eyes in that room that night. because we knew it was a special night. And it was. And it was a fantastic episode. So yeah. If no wonder, I'm going to keep fighting for Wynonna. And I hope everybody else does too. All right. Thank you. See you next episode.